Today we're making this adorable buttercream Minions cake. I used my favorite banana cake recipe to make this cake just because Minions love bananas, but you can make this cake with any flavor. The key is to have 4 6-inch cake layers to give our Minion the perfect dimensions. Once our cake layers have baked and cooled, we're going to level 3 of the layers and leave one of them unleveled so we can get a nice rounded head on our Minion. We're taking one of our cake tops and we're adding in about 2 teaspoons of buttercream, and I'm just kind of mixing it together / cutting it up almost with a fork to get kind of a cake pop texture. You should be able to easily handle the mixture. It shouldn't be too greasy. And once you get to that stage, we're going to cover it and set it aside for later. This is going to help make our Minions' feet, but we're not quite there yet. And then it's time to start assembling our cake. First, we add a bit of buttercream to help keep that cake layer in place, and then we're placing that first cake layer slightly off center, as you can see here, just so that we have room to add our Minions' feet. We're spreading a nice thick layer of vanilla buttercream between each cake layer, and you can use any type of buttercream. I'm using American buttercream because it's just the easiest to make and my favorite to eat, but you could also make this cake with Swiss meringue or Italian. The colors might be slightly less bright using those buttercreams, but they would work great. So we place that rounded cake layer on top to give our Minions' head a nice round shape. Then we spread a thin coat of frosting all around the cake just to lock in any of those rogue crumbs. And the last step before chilling it is to add on our Minions' feet. So we're taking a little bit of that kind of cake pop mixture we made earlier, and we're shaping out 2 legs and feet. If you find you're having a hard time keeping yours in place, you can always insert a toothpick or a small wooden dowel into them. And while we chill our cake in the fridge or freezer, it's time to color our buttercream. I've placed 1/3 cup of uncolored frosting in a piping bag and set it aside. Then we work on our blue buttercream. I'm using gel food coloring here to create these colors, and we're placing this into a piping bag with a flat tip, which is going to make it a lot easier to pipe on the overalls. Then we color 2 tablespoons of frosting brown using warm brown gel food coloring. I know this looks gross, but it's going to be the iris of our Minions. Just trust the process. Place that in a piping bag with a small round tip like a Wilton 10. Then we're using just a little bit of black gel food coloring to make our gray buttercream. This is 1/3 cup of buttercream. We're placing it in a small piping bag with a large round piping tip. Then we move on to our black buttercream. To get really black buttercream, you need to use a decent amount of black gel food coloring, and I also like to add in dark cocoa powder and a little bit of extra heavy cream. And then it's really important that you use a coupler in this piping bag because we're going to need to use different tips on this, and it works like a charm, just popping in and out different piping tips to create different designs with one bag of frosting. I also don't know if you noticed, but we mixed all of those frosting colors in one bowl. We strategically work on mixing our lighter colors to our darker colors, so you really don't have to use a bunch of different bowls. You can make them all in one, just trust me. Then we color our remaining buttercream that's still in our original mixing bowl yellow with some gel food coloring, and we're all ready to go. You technically don't have to add the yellow buttercream into a piping bag, but I just think it makes it a lot easier to get a thick, even layer of buttercream around your cake, so I decided to use it. Next, we remove our cake from the fridge or freezer and make sure that crumb coat is firm to the touch. Then we smooth on a second, thicker layer of yellow buttercream. You don't have to worry about getting the bottom of the cake super smooth because we're going to be piping the overalls over it, but I am just a little bit neurotic and I really enjoy getting my buttercream as smooth as possible. To do this, I also use a little piece of acetate sheet, which really helps on curved cakes like this. Next, we're mapping out where we want our Minions' goggles and overalls to go, and I like to do this with a circle cutter that's about 2 inches across and then an offset spatula. You could also use a toothpick or a scribe. This is such an important step because it just makes sure that everything is properly spaced out and proportional. And then it's time for the real fun, the piping. So I started with making the overalls using that flat tip. This is an Ateco 48, but any flat smooth tip should work. And then we're smoothing it out with a small offset spatula and an acetate sheet. And once we've added on the straps, it's time to cover our Minions' shoes with black buttercream. And for anyone who doesn't know, an acetate sheet is just a thin piece of plastic. I buy them in big squares that are 1 foot by 1 foot on Amazon. And then I use scissors just to cut them into smaller pieces to work on cakes like this. Then we use our remaining yellow buttercream to pipe our Minions' arms, and we've swiped the piping tip on our black buttercream to be a round tip. This was a Wilton 10 to pipe on its gloves. Then we fill in the goggles with some white buttercream, pipe an outline in gray, and add on the irises and pupils. And then this last step, I swear, is the hardest, piping on the strap around the Minions' glasses. I find that it really helps to get in a position where you're comfortable and you can rest your elbow on something to make sure that it's nice and steady. And then our adorable Minions cake is all ready to go. This tutorial uses a lot of different frosting tips and tools, so I'm going to link them all below to share which ones I'm using, and I'm also going to link the recipe that I used. And I think that's it. Until next time, happy baking.